First things first, a new podcast in the description. Talked about the Celtics injuries and how do they deal with that before the postseason. And then I talked about a movie called Thoroughbreds that is kind of dark but also pretty entertaining. So you can find that in the description. But now we're going to talk about LeBron James and his potential free agency, which I talked about, say like a week ago, maybe less than that, about the idea of him going to the 76ers. But the other team that has been in the rumors for LeBron a lot is the Lakers, and I'm sure that I talked about this a little bit after the Lakers traded Jordan Clarkson and Nance for Isaiah. At least I think I did. I don't really remember. But we'll dive into this here because I think it's a really interesting thing with the Lakers and the amount of money they have now after the Isaiah Thomas trade just fell into their lap and all that good stuff. So right now they're at $39 million. Once this season's over, let everybody go. Then you have pretty much two options. You could, one, stretch out Luol Deng's contract, make it about $18 million a season right now. And if you were able to stretch that out to, I don't really know what it would be, $5-6 million, let's say. I guess for an example, the Pistons are going to be paying Josh Smith about $5.4 million a season until 2020. So we might see a similar thing with Luol Deng here. And that would allow you to get to around $26 million on the salary cap, which would give you the opportunity to sign two guys to like $35 million deals or whatever it may be, right? And those two guys would ideally be LeBron James and Paul George. OKC Thunder, struggling a bit lately. I think the loss of Andre Robertson was just too much for them to overcome. And they're trying to deal with it with Corey Brewer, and I don't think Corey Brewer is anywhere near the player that Andre Robertson is. But OKC has also won 3 in a row, so we'll have to see there. But, I mean, if Paul George has the opportunity to leave a team that goes down in maybe round 1, maybe round 2, and then he sees what's going on with the Lakers and the LeBron rumors, I mean, LeBron James and Paul George on the same team, I think that team would probably end up being better than the OKC Thunder are right now, And with all the rumors of Paul George to LA, it's all seemed to be looking in the same direction, And then, of course, LeBron's the other guy. However, if you do choose to go down that route with Luol Deng's stretch provision, then Julius Randle is put into a very tough situation where if you signed the two big names, that would put you at around $97 million in salary, and the cap isn't going to be that much higher than that. And Randle's qualifying offer is about $6 million, right? So you would not be able to re-sign Randle until you already had the other two guys on the roster. And that creates some complications because, I mean, if someone else throws an offer at him before you even have the chance to sign a LeBron or whoever, then you have to not do it. Unless you wanted to trade away Tyler Ennis or Josh Hart or Kyle Kuzma, which I wouldn't really do all that. I still don't know if the money would really even be in your favor, even in that situation. So there is a possibility that Randle is just simply not on this team next season. Now, if they're only able to get one guy, then you keep Julius Randle. I mean, he's got skills. A switchy defender who can play small ball center and roll to the basket, and he's got some handling abilities. Randle does things well. But if he's got to go in order for LeBron James and Paul George to end up on your team, well, then he's going to go, and that's just the way it is. Now, depending on the timing of it all, if you somehow manage to sign the two big dudes and then Randle still hadn't actually been signed yet, then I think you might be able to do it. But I don't know if it would really come to that. I feel like some team would force the Lakers' hand. Someone has to want Julius Randle, I assume. And then after that, you just throw the offer at him, and then the Lakers are in that precarious situation where we kind of have to let him go. So there's that option. That's with the Luol Deng stretch. Now, if you manage to get all of Luol Deng's money off the books, which would be quite an accomplishment, then the potential of keeping Randle opens up a little bit more. Now, he is still a restricted free agent, and if someone throws like $10 million at him, then you'd be in a tough spot. Now, you would still technically be able to afford him, but then it becomes a matter of what is Randle really worth and all those kind of things. But to actually trade Luol Deng's contract, let's go into that idea. So he's making $18 million next year, $18 million, nearly $19 million really, in 2020. Now they do have the Cavaliers' first-round draft pick, which as of right now is lingering around number 21, 22, somewhere in there. Would I be willing to take on $18 million of Luol Deng for this season and next season just to get that one draft pick if I'm a really bad team that has a bunch of cap space? I mean, probably not. I would want you to include either Josh Hart or Zubac, or however his last name goes, or Thomas Bryant. I would want one of those guys. The Lakers would probably not put any of them in the deal. Although, I mean, if you have basically a guarantee from LeBron that he's coming, well, then you do it. But I have to assume you're not going to get that. And I can't picture the Lakers moving like Josh Hart for the sake of this. And even then, you're probably going to have to take back some salary. So, an example of that could be, like, say if you were talking to the Bulls about trading Luol Deng there, right? You give them the Cavs pick. If I was the Bulls, I would say, okay, I'll take on the pick, but you have to take back Omer Asik, which is still a decent amount of less money for the Lakers. It's the same amount of years, because he has an early termination option in 2020, but he makes $10 million this year, $11 million next year. So if you're the Lakers, you would still get down in salary, but that wouldn't be enough to make you do the move, because you could just get more under the cap via just buying Deng out, right? But if you're the Bulls, you don't care about that. You're not trying to make it easy for the Lakers to build the next dynasty. You're trying to help yourself out. So there's a lot of options. And I think it all pretty much rides on how confident they are that they can sign LeBron. Because if you can get him, then I don't see why Paul George wouldn't sign at that point, given that there have been all the Lakers rumors. And if you are very confident that you can get LeBron, well then you do what you got to do. You trade Deng, you trade the Cleveland pick, you put Josh Hart and probably Zubac, you put them both into the deal, because then you're getting the best player in the league, and then you're getting a top 13 at the very least player as well. And then at that point, you would still be able to re-sign Randle. Now, if you believe that LeBron is not coming, but you're pretty confident that Paul George will, then I guess you start exploring the idea of getting a win-now type of player in free agency who hopefully doesn't kill your salary. And, you keep all your young dudes, and then you go with something like Lonzo, and I don't know who your two-guard would be. Maybe you re-sign KCP, not for $17 million, of course. Paul George, Ingram. Maybe you would go for like a win-now type of center. There's other options. That would be the plan B, which still isn't that bad because you would get Paul George. If I can get back to LeBron, though, the other thing that's interesting is what would it mean for Lonzo? Because Number one, you could say that Lonzo is not exactly the best player to play off of LeBron because the three-pointers looked better lately. I'll give him that. But he's more of a guy who needs the ball in his hand, makes passes to everybody else, and I mean, I'm a big fan of Lonzo, I am. But if LeBron James gets thrown into that equation with LeVar Ball, we have to remember that. The massive headache that could create. Do you trade Lonzo? Now, if you only get Paul George, then no, you don't trade him. But if it's LeBron James, that might just be too much to handle off the floor especially, but I think on the floor it could cause some complications as well. And if you were going to trade Lonzo, you could definitely get yourself a win-now player because, I mean, just look at basically any team in the NBA who's unsure of their point guard position, they would gladly take on Lonzo, at least from a basketball standpoint. I don't know if they want to take on the LeVar Ball situation. But it should be said also, like, Magic Johnson kind of embraces that stuff. I'm sure he doesn't love everything about LeVar Ball, but he certainly likes being in the spotlight. And maybe he would just take that on. I don't know. That's a thing that I have seen brought up on Twitter, the world of Google. And I do think it is an interesting conversation to have, what would happen with Lonzo. As far as Kyle Kuzma and Brandon Ingram, I would give those guys a better chance of fitting in with LeBron right away, especially Kuzma, because he's such a good off-ball player who's, he's just good at cutting, he's good at spot shooting and all that stuff. And then Ingram is getting there as a scorer. He's been really good lately, doing a lot of stuff off the dribble and all that. It's all interesting stuff, man. And once again, I think all of this is pretty much riding on how confident the Lakers are that they can get LeBron. Because if that's the case, well then some moves are definitely going to be happening, and some guys who have been on the team for a couple years might not be on the team for much longer. If it's only Paul George, then I don't expect there to be too much roster turnover. And if it's neither one of them, then, well, to be fair, you still have a lot of cap space and you have a good young team. So the Lakers are in a pretty okay position. We'll just have to see what happens. But that's going to do it. Once again, new podcast in the description. Celtics injuries, thoroughbreds, and I'm done.